So what we do is we replace firmographic marketing with what we call buying signals. Firmographic marketing is what's your revenue, what's your head count, what industry are you in? And those are all fundamentally flawed. For example, what industry is Apple Computer in? Are they a retailer? Are they a movie production house?
Yeah.
Do they make computers?
Technology, yeah.
Technology? Yeah, technology is so broad, it's meaningless, right? So that's true of almost every company. As a company grows revenue by being differentiated. And that differentiation is how that company fits into another company's supply chain. So what we do is we look at how do companies operate, their operational profile, how they work internally, and what is their business profile? How do they present themselves to the outside world? And between these two dimensions, we can tell you how every company fits into every other company's supply chain and why one company might be interested in another company's product or service. I think one of the most important things is, start with your customer, start with revenue, and engineer everything back from that. It's a lot easier to have a conversation with customers about money than it is forth. I like to tell our team, when artificial intelligence works, we call it software. When it doesn't work, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence. And our customers really don't care about the AI, they care about the results. And if we maintain that discipline throughout the organization, it actually makes us, ironically, an AI first company, because everything we do is around our AI targeting to drive revenue growth. But what customers care about is, are you helping me deliver more revenue to my bottom line? Dysfunctional, extremely dysfunctional. That's the single word answer.
Yeah. Did you have siblings or?
Yeah, so my parents divorced in a long, ugly divorce, probably when I started when I was about 6, and about 8, I think the divorce was finalized. And so I was shuttled between a lot of houses. I had my mother remarried and to a family that had 2 much older siblings. My father remarried into a family that had 3 other siblings. And so I actually had a total of, I had a biological sister. So I had 6 brothers and sisters growing up.
Wow.
And then as an adult, my father remarried again at the age of 81, adding 4 more siblings. So I have a total of 10 siblings. And I think that, my childhood was not a particularly happy one. I don't think that I felt, it was tough. I was fortunate in a lot of ways. I was fortunate that I was in a middle-class family. So I think I had a lot of shots on goal, so to speak, multiple chances to recover from failure, which helped me a lot because I was not a particularly good student in school. I got kicked out of the gifted program for misbehavior. I graduated in the bottom half of my high school class. But because of the middle-class nature of my family, I was still able to go to college, still able to get a job. And when I graduated from high school, I grew up in southwestern Pennsylvania in a little town called Latrobe. And when I graduated from high school in 1984, the economy was just in the tank.
Yeah.
I thought that I really wanted to get a job to see the world. I needed to make some money, and there's no opportunity in the coal mines. There's no opportunity in the steel mills. They were all laying people off. I tried to go into the merchant marine and couldn't get a job there either. And so going to college was plan D. Okay. And I was very fortunate that a friend of mine talked me into it. And I was fortunate enough to have a family background, because I think the other alternative for me was to go sign up for the military. And so I think a lot of my life has really been lucky in a way. I think that I was fortunate to have started businesses with some really great people. I started my first company when I was 25. And I think that was a real seminal moment in my life to learn what it took to actually start a business and grow a business.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk a little bit about what the inspiration was to start that first business. You hadn't ever had any entrepreneurial tendencies before that, it sounds like. What made you want to jump into?
Yeah, business? I did have a little bit of entrepreneurial tendencies before that. So when I was a kid growing up, I had a paper route when I was back when we delivered papers, I was probably about, I think the minimum age was you had to be 12. And I think I got my first paper out right at the age of 12. I also cut grass and shoveled snow and did whatever I could do to make some money. My father actually started his first business at the age of 48.
Oh,
he
wow.
was broke. He was divorced. He didn't have anything left to lose. And so he started his first business, and he was very successful after I had left the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I became a very good student in college. And when I got out of college, I worked at a strategy consulting firm. And it was like one of these 2 or 3 year analyst positions, and then they push you off to go get an MBA.
Mm-hmm.
I got into an MBA program, and I went to the interview to talk to the other students. I realized I was just cut of different material. They were there to try to figure out what they wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And in the course of my day job as a analyst at this consulting firm, I ran into an opportunity to create a new class of software to manage corporate real estate assets.
Okay.
And that was my first startup. And so the real motivation was autonomy. I wanted to have control over my life, and I wanted to be my own boss. And I've gone through that cycle. I think it's a personality disorder, actually, to be an entrepreneur. I don't think it's something I would really highly recommend. I really like working for years for free and having endless struggle until you figure out actually how to grow revenue. And that's, and those moments are precious, rare, and don't happen very often.
Well, that's going to be a big focus of what we're talking about today, is growing revenue. And you've obviously had great success with LeadCrunch. You've grown revenues by 7,248% since 2017. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you worked on, or what did you focus on to be able to make such large strides, that quickly?
Yeah, the key to growing revenue is to solve a problem that people that create an existential threat to your customer. So in our case, we are a business-to-business artificial intelligence that helps marketers find the right audience and engage that audience of ideal prospects to become their next best customer. Mm-hmm. And so what we fundamentally do is find the ideal customer profile based on account-based marketing lists or prior customers. So you can give us any list and we'll find lookalikes to that list. Technically, what we're doing is very similar for B2B marketing, what Facebook and Google did for B2C marketing. And that is, Facebook replaced demographic segmentation with psychographic segmentation. Mm-hmm. Instead of looking at where do you live and your age and what your education is, which are all demographic profiles, mm-hmm. They looked at what do you like, who are you friends with, what are your friends like, and it's a much more networked approach of understanding who you are as a person. What we do, business to business marketing, is fundamentally different. The way you grow revenue in a B2B market is very different than the way you grow revenue in B2C. Mm-hmm. One example of that difference is in business to consumer marketing, personalization increases the conversion rate, and that obviously drives up revenue. Mm-hmm. In B2B, you're selling to an organization where there's multiple decision makers, or at least multiple people influencing the decision. And so you have to build consensus. So if you're selling to an organization that has 5 influencers and 1 decision maker, you have 6 different people that are involved in the decision. If you personalize the message, you're likely to amplify the differences between those 6 people. You're not going to build consensus. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we replace firmographic marketing with what we call buying signals. Firmographic marketing is what's your revenue, what's your head count, what industry are you in? And those are all fundamentally flawed. For example, what industry is Apple Computer in? Are they a retailer? Are they a movie production house? Yeah. Do they make computers?
Technology, yeah.
Technology, yeah. Technology is so broad, it's meaningless, right? So that's true of almost every company. As a company grows revenue by being differentiated. And that differentiation is how that company fits into another company's supply chain. So what we do is we look at how do companies operate, their operational profile, how they work internally, and what is their business profile? How do they present themselves to the outside world? And between these two dimensions, we can tell you how every company fits into every other company's supply chain and why one company might be interested in another company's product or service. And these are buying signals that are oftentimes unique to each individual company.
Wow.
And that's what we're doing.
So what types of buying signals can you tap into? Like what types of signals are there available for you to, I guess, poll or find?
First off, there's an array or multiple buying signals for any given company. It's not one simple answer. Let's take an example. One of our customers sells voice over internet, which is a way of replacing old landline telephones. And it's a really interesting business because once you go with it's known by its acronym VoIP. Once you go with a VoIP provider, you don't change. It's really sticky revenue. And the adoption's actually quite low and it's hard for us to believe in the technology market because we all use VoIP. But only less than 10% of all companies use VoIP. There's still a lot of people still using, the legacy telecom providers. So they were used to use firmographic marketing. We sell to companies with more than 200 employees. We sell to these industries. We like these locations because that's where we've had prior customers. We replaced that with a different way of thinking about it. We looked at who they sell to, and we found a signal, which we call communicativeness. What portion of their employee base are in high communication roles? High communication role would be sales, customer service, customer success, versus low communication roles, which might be engineering. And that ratio very clearly explained who their best customers were, far better than a head count.
Yeah.
And we're actually able to determine how quickly someone would buy their VoIP based on another dimension called cloudiness. To what degree has a company migrated their technologies into the cloud? If they were 100% in the cloud, chances are they were already with a competitor, bad fit. If they were 0% in the cloud, hard sales cycle. So there's actually a sweet spot between 20 and 40% where they had the shortest sales cycle. So we could tell them who to target and what would be the fastest sales.
Wow.
And we're actually able to increase their conversion rate 700%.
Wow.
While we increase their available market by more than 300%.
That's incredible. What would be the setup for someone that is looking for your services? Like what type of information? I know that you said, if you have a list, that would be great. What happens if someone doesn't have a list? Is there any way that you have some type of a database already? No. And then I guess how large of a list would you need? Is it more the better, or is there a minimum that you would need to be able to?
Yeah, all great questions. No list, we're not going to take you as a customer.
Okay.
We like to see people with account-based marketing lists. Those are, we think, some of the most sophisticated marketers. And in an account-based marketing environment, we either help you expand your ABM to people that you didn't know about, the unknowns, or if you know your market, a lot of the big enterprises know their market extremely well. We help you understand how to expand your presence with the existing ABM that you have. So kind of that expansion share of wallet. If you don't have a list, you're not a good fit for us. In fact, we like to see our customers have sales automation, something like Salesforce, marketing automation, something like HubSpot. We like to see them have at least 10 pieces of content, which would be white papers, case studies, best practices guide. This tells us that they are an analytical marketer and they have the tools that we need to do our job. It starts off by giving us a list. The list can be as short as 50. More is better. Our enterprise customers literally gives us thousands of examples. What's unique about our technology is that it can work on as few as 25.
Wow.
So it will work on very faint signals, but obviously the more data you give it, the smarter it becomes.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is the turnaround time for you to enter in these lists and then it to return the results, or these are the right types of companies to focus in on?
Less than 30 seconds.
Okay.
So,
So
once you upload it, it's we've done a lot of optimization around the engine, but the engine's looking at billions of data points, and it's in a very fancy, sophisticated cloud computing architecture where if you upload into our system and it gives you the ideal customer profile and a target list, that whole cycle typically takes way less than 30 seconds. Sometimes it's as fast as 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah. And is this available for pretty well any B2B company, or are there certain industries that it works better in than others?
It's easier to tell you what we don't do.
Okay.
We don't do business to government. We don't do a lot of regulated industries. If you need to sell to radiologists, that's a published list. We're not very good. We don't add a lot of value where there's a published list. Where we add the most value is where customers say, well, our sales team can tell you the ideal customer kind of intuitively. There's more than one way to describe it. Or where there's a complex sale or complex buyer profile, or where the actual value of the product is quite high. Not surprisingly, most of our customers are big tech companies. SAP, Google, these type of companies use us quite extensively. What we try to avoid are the really small companies which don't have the analytical discipline to evaluate what we do and give us feedback. We live on feedback. We live on data.
So it's almost a partnership then at that point, where you're constantly getting, the feedback loop from the customer and tweaking and modifying and changing in that.
Correct. One of the things that we think, we want to tie ourselves to revenue growth. So our technology is tied to revenue growth. The best way to do that is to sell campaigns. We price our campaigns based on the value that we're delivering. You can't do that with a subscription. And I don't like to buy subscriptions myself. I like to buy things that I know are going to get value. So what we like to do is we like to start off with a pilot. And that pilot, when it's successful, converts into an ongoing campaign. We are developing technology that will be a subscription for our customers. We plan to give it to our customers as part of the campaigns that we run.
Okay. So that's interesting. I didn't realize that. I thought we were just going to be identifying the people that you should target, but you guys actually go into the whole, building of campaigns and, the whole marketing end of it as well.
Yeah. I think identification is a parlor trick. I think that there's no real way to know whether you've created value by identifying the right person until 6 months from now. What we want to deliver is actionable intelligence to grow revenue. Joe is interested in your product for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Yeah.
This is the content that's most likely to engage him. Give us this content. We're going to go out and reach out to Joe on your behalf, get him engaged, and we're going to deliver to you either a marketing qualified lead or a sales qualified lead or an appointment. Wow. There's going to be something that you can do with Joe when we hand that information to Joe. And oh, by the way, when we hand you Joe's information, it's 99.5% accurate.
Wow.
Compared to, other data providers, the best we've seen is around 80% accuracy.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. That's very, very powerful. How did you get into this space? Did you come up with this idea, or is there a catalyst that put you into this space?
A lot of luck kind of led us here. I'm not smart enough to have come up with this idea on my own. It's a team effort. We started off with a technology that we thought was very interesting for medical research. And we'd actually developed a way of data mining medical research. And it was quite successful technically. It got papers published, and the researcher that was using it got funding, but we couldn't sell it. It wasn't commercially viable. We couldn't grow revenue. So one of my advisors is the former deputy director of DARPA. He was the undersecretary of defense. And we're having breakfast, and I was telling him my business wasn't going very well. And he said, well, it sounds like a targeting technology. I'm like, yeah, pretty much most AI can be thought of as a targeting technology because it's pattern recognition. It's like, well, sell it to the military. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And so he introduced me to a mutual friend of ours that helped us sell it to Lockheed Martin. And we actually beat Palantir and IBM Watson to win a contract with Lockheed Martin to develop target verification technologies for the US Navy. I am not well suited to be a defense contractor.
Yeah.
So my business partner and I spent a lot of time figuring out, okay, where could we find a commercial application for this targeting technology? And we tried a bunch of different things and eventually stumbled upon demand generation as a way of using targeting technology to help our customers grow revenue. And once you're tied to revenue growth, you're sticky. You're going to be there for a long time, and your customers love you because that's the name of the game.
Yeah. Well, talk about sticky. You are number 35 on the Inc. 500 list this year. So congratulations there. Talk a little bit about what it takes to, I guess, enter into being on that list, or how do you qualify for that list, and how do you make your way to number 35 at this point?
Yeah, so we went to market really the beginning of 2017. We had a little bit of revenue at the end of 2016, and we were in hyper growth through the middle of 2019. We actually missed our 2019 plan. Had we made our 2019 plan, we probably would have been in the top 5 or 6.
Wow.
But the way you get to the Inc. 500, the top tier of the Inc. 500, is to monomaniacally focus on revenue growth as evidenced by happy customers that keep coming back and buying more and more. Mm-hmm. And that's a much bigger story that involves teamwork. You know, how do you get from idea to market very quickly and efficiently? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of moving parts. It requires a management team that works well, that's cohesive. And along the way, when in the hypergrowth, you know, the things that took us from 0 to 1 million in revenue were a lot different than things that took us from 1 million to 10 million in revenue. Mm-hmm. And now we're going from 10 million to 20 million in revenue. That's a completely different game again. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the hard skills for startups is to understand when they need to change their mindset about how they're growing and what type of skills are necessary to build that next system that's robust enough to withstand those pressures.
Mm-hmm. And when you're saying system, you're basically talking about the systems, procedures, everything, how everybody communicates, how everybody accesses the processes to do this specific task. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys have done to be able to put those systems in place? Any types of tools or suggestions that you've learned to use over the years to sort of systematize your process so everything did run as effectively, as efficiently as possible?
Yeah, so my background is in systems engineering with a focus in artificial intelligence. So I think our approach is really to look at constraints. Is you think of every department as an interface with other departments. Mm-hmm. For instance, let's take a really simple example. Accounting. Your accounting system when you're 1 million looks a lot different than when you're at 12 million. Mm-hmm. It's just a different approach. The bad news is like switching accounting systems takes you longer than it does for you to outgrow it. Mm-hmm. So you have to think ahead of where are you going. And this is where venture capital comes into play, is if you're growing a hyper-growth company, and that type of revenue growth will oftentimes cost you more capital than what you have available through bootstrapping. So, you know, the Inc. 500 list really should be split into 2, venture-backed companies and non-venture-backed companies. Because when you're venture-backed, you can afford to grow revenue by spending your way to do it. Mm-hmm. When you're bootstrapping, and I've bootstrapped a bunch of companies before I started this one, your growth is really limited by available cash. And cash is king. Mm-hmm. So kind of the heroes that I think about in terms of where I get inspiration on how to think about this is the people that really develop the whole cash management paradigm of business. And there's a good book called The Outsiders, which talks about John Singleton and some of these people that really did remarkable jobs of growing these businesses in the 80s and 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think one of the most important things is, you know, start with your customer, start with revenue, and engineer everything back from that. It's a lot easier to have a conversation with customers about money than it is about the bullshit of your technology and so forth. I like to tell our team, when artificial intelligence works, we call it software. When it doesn't work, we talk a lot about artificial intelligence. And our customers really don't care about the AI, they care about the results. And if we maintain that discipline throughout the organization, it actually makes us, ironically, an AI first company, because everything we do is around our AI targeting to drive revenue growth. But what customers care about is, are you helping me deliver more revenue to my bottom line?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you kind of touched on a book there, and you are flanked by a couple of bookcases of books. Do you have any other good book recommendations that you've read over the years that have helped you grow revenue?
There's so many great books out there. There's also a lot of really bad books. So I think that not all of the books behind me I would recommend. I think that depending upon where you are in the journey of your career, I think I think it's really important to read books with a critical mind. Great books are things that you can disagree with. Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 would be a good example of that. I really think that framework of how to create monopolies is a really interesting perspective. I have modified it because I don't agree with everything that Peter Thiel has said, but I think that he's got some really key points there. I think Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore is a kind of a timeless piece on how technology gets adopted. And technology adoption is really the name of the game for how you take a product to market and how you grow its revenue. If you target everybody, the innovators and early adopters, just the way you target laggards, you're going to fail because you're too diffuse. I think that Crossing the Chasm leads to kind of the evolution of account-based marketing, of how do we focus on our ideal customer profile. And there's a number of books that are good in that area. I think that probably it would be specific on what industry you're in, or what markets you're in. I like to think of markets rather than in industries.
Got it. No, this has been fantastic. I certainly appreciate the time. And if someone wanted to learn more about your systems, yourself, what would be the best way to reach out, would you say?
Well, you can reach me at olin@leadcrunch.ai. I'm also on LinkedIn and all the social media. Our company website has some free tools for you to play with, free AI targeting tools. For instance, one is the COVID impact score. Now, how much has your market been impacted by COVID? And if you go to leadcrunch.ai in the top little corner, or leadcrunch.com, both of them work. There's a little thing called free AI tools. And one of those is Market Analyzer, helps you understand what your target markets are. And the other one is COVID impact score.
Very, very cool. Excellent. No, this has been fantastic. I wish you nothing but success, and obviously look forward to seeing what else you guys come out with. And we will certainly keep an eye on you guys as you're growing through the ranks of the more successful businesses in the country. So congratulations.
Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure. I'm really flattered and honored to be a part of this. And so thank you. And hopefully the audience has found this helpful.
I think they will. I appreciate it.